When a buyer makes an offer on a house that I'm representing the seller for, the first thing that goes through my mind is like, okay, we need to explore all the options and everything that can possibly go wrong and have contingency plans in place. While most of my sellers are ecstatic, they're joyous and thinking, oh my God, this was so easy to get an offer. Why did I ever need an agent to begin with? They forget about the prep, they forgot about the marketing, and they forgot about the negotiations sometimes. And they're like, what's next? I'm ready to close and get my money. We're not home free yet. Let's take a look at 5 of the things that can go horribly wrong when selling a house. My name is Andrew Finney, and my passion is helping you make sense of real estate. If you need help finding a top agent near you, or if you simply want to drop me a line to say hello, my contact info is below. If you're new here, please go ahead and subscribe to this channel now and like this video. Thank you. All right, my friend, please don't forget about all the hard work that your agent put into working on getting your home sold. Sometimes it's best just to simply illustrate this with like a pie chart of the 4 components that comprise the realities of selling a house. The first slice of the pie is the preparation phase. The second slice of the pie is the marketing phase. In other words, attracting those well-qualified buyers to help you get that offer on your home. And the third slice of the pie are real estate negotiations to ensure that everybody is happy with the contract moving forward into the closing process. And the fourth slice, the critical slice that we're talking about today, is the actual closing process itself. A strong, trusted real estate advisor will be able to navigate you away from harm and into safe harbors because they're already considering all the ways this could go awry and how best to protect your best interest. Consider the very real fact that depending on the agent's experience, even if they have like 20 years in the business, if they've only ever sold 40 properties, could equal a lack of experience. An agent's experience is not dictated on the years they've been in the business as much as is how many closings has that agent achieved during their time within the real estate industry. Our experience as an agent is dramatically different in a lot of other cases where our experience is gained by every opportunity, every family that we represent, not the number of years that we've had a license. That being said, an inexperienced agent may not be familiar with the closing process itself. Now, please don't mistake what I'm saying. I'm not beating up on inexperienced agents or new agents whatsoever. I'm simply sharing with you that a trusted real estate advisor, a top agent in your area, will know how to keep you out of the rough waters that could occur during the closing process. By the same token, if you were enticed by one of those many brokerages across the country that have those low commission brackets, consider the fact they might not offer the services for the closing process or the mid-escrow phase, and they leave that all up to you to figure out on your own. That's not so cool whenever you're trying to get ready to close on your home. The other thing to consider is they simply might not care. You might have paid them a flat fee and they're in their mind they're already done with the transaction before it ever really started because you paid them. So it's important to think about that as you consider what type of agent to hire selling your home. Expertise is where it's at. And the best way to know that you're getting the right agent is simply by Googling the name of the agent. Let's use my name as an example. Go to Google, type in Andrew Finney Las Vegas or Andrew Finney Realtor and see what you're going to get. What you would want to do is you want to open up the profiles of the agent and check their ratings, their reviews, and their past sales performance. This will give you a strong inclination into who you just entrusted selling your biggest asset, your home. So now let's talk about those 5 things that could go wrong. The first thing is the buyer doesn't make the earnest money deposit. Now you might be thinking, well, that's like the first part of the process, isn't it, Andrew? Yes, it is. The first part of the closing process is for that buyer to get wiring instructions or a certified cashier's check over to the title company to open up the escrow itself and to begin the closing process. Where this becomes problematic is, let's say that buyer was out there making multiple offers on a property and you accepted their offer, but maybe they've had another house in mind that they really liked even more, and they decide to cancel yours and go with the other house. That's one very real possibility of what happens. Consider it from the vantage point that you as a seller can entertain multiple offers, and consider it from the vantage point of the buyer. They can also make multiple offers and then pull back and choose the one that they want to go with. So it's important to know the realities of the market and how this works. How this could impact you is, depending on the experience level of the agent, they may have immediately changed the status of your property into a contingent or no-show status, saying that you've accepted an offer. It depends on the multiple listing service and the local association of realtors to what policies and procedures are expected of the trusted real estate advisor and how soon they have to change this information. Generally, it could be 2 or 3 business days or 2 to 3 calendar days. That being said, it's never wise to change that status until you get confirmation of the earnest money deposit. To remain compliant, an agent might find themselves on day number 3 needing to change it within the next few hours, but if you haven't received earnest money yet, then what needs to happen is a good conversation, a heart-to-heart heart between your listing agent and the buyer agent to see what's going on. At the end of the day, if that buyer has not made good on their earnest money deposit and has not provided you with a rationale as to why they have not yet made it, it might be time for you to walk before you change the status. And just in case you're wondering why we're going so much into the status part of this, consider the fact that whenever a home goes under contract, you see that it's under contract because you're probably looking at a home too, right? Consider when you see those properties, what's the first thing that you think the moment that you see they're back on the market? Right or wrong, you're probably thinking something's wrong with the house. Why did the buyer turn tail like they got horrified that there was a zombie or a goblin chasing them out of the house? It starts stigmatizing the property in all the wrong ways, when in reality it was simply a wishy-washy buyer that couldn't commit. So that's not cool. Let's keep you away from harm and a negative stigma on your property when it has nothing to do with you. Let's play this game smart, and your trusted real estate advisor, the top agent near you, will know how to play this game correctly and will share with you the best practices here and also alert you if there's any red flags going on early in the process. The second thing that can go horrifically wrong is a bad home inspection. A bad home inspection could happen for several different reasons. It could be an inexperienced or even a bad home inspector. A lot of home inspectors are really good. In fact, a licensed home inspector will generally use a 1600 point checklist to assess your condition of your property. That being said, it's obviously very thorough. So if there was anything that was missed with your maintenance, from your HVAC system to maybe a hole in the roof or a foundation issue, it's going to come out in that report. That's why it's best practice to consider getting a pre-listing home inspection prior to going on the market and making any repairs or corrections as needed based upon that home inspection you did with your trusted real estate advisor prior to going onto the market. The wisdom is huge, because what's going to happen if you don't do that? The prudence of that process is massively powerful. Let's consider a couple of different options here. If you did the pre-listing home inspection up front, you fixed everything, what can you do with that home inspection and the repair receipts? You can make that available to prospective buyers, which is going to make them feel even better about offering you a solid price for your home and some better terms that are going to be more favorable to you in that process, because they know they don't have to worry about those items moving forward during their home ownership period. While on the flip side, if you don't do it and these problems are uncovered during the closing process, a buyer could turn something minor in their mind's eye into something huge. This is of no fault of the buyer. It's simply our human nature. We're putting up hundreds of thousands or millions of dollars to purchase a house, which tends to make a lot of us a little bit nervous and a little bit like hyper vigilant. So when we see something that we as a homeowner know is kind of small, let's say a settling crack in the house that can easily be caulked over and painted, and that's all it needs as a fix, they might see that and think it's a full-on structural issue and ask you for $10,000 off the price. I mean, that's how significant a small thing can become and how it can get blown out of proportion in the minds of a buyer. Now, it really goes down to the skill level of that home inspector and the skill level of their trusted real estate advisor representing them as a buyer, and the education phase of what's going on with the home inspection and the repair request they could submit to you. All the same, it could cause a buyer to walk if it produces too much anxiety and too much fear. I always share with you that fear is nothing more than an acronym, false evidence appearing real, and the best way to replace it is with knowledge, because with knowledge comes comfort and confidence moving forward. So what can we learn from this? Having the pre-listing home inspection done up front, making those repairs up front prior to going on the market, and making it available to prospective buyers will go ahead and alleviate this one thing that can go massively wrong. The third thing that can go awry is a low appraisal. Now, when we're talking about a low appraisal, we have all heard of them before. But what really constitutes a low appraisal? It's not like appraisers go out to assess the value of a property with a thought process. How much can I drive down the price today? How much can I drop the seller's price? How much can I piss them off? That's not what's going through the mind of an appraiser. An appraiser is taking an honest assessment of the market, your home in relation to comparable properties in the area, and dialing in the valuation that is appropriate based upon the features and amenities of your property to like and kind homes. It's not the intention of an appraiser to lowball your appraisal amount. It's their intention to actually display what's going on in the market for the purpose of the home buyer's loan. It's important to note that a home buyer cannot get more home loan than an appraised amount. So if the price is wrong or it feels like a low appraisal, there's a few different things that can happen. The first thing that could have been done is that by working with a top trusted real estate advisor in your area, you could have already known what the realistic fair market value price was for your home, including the features and benefits of your property in relation to what's currently on the market, what is currently sold in the last 3 months, and taking into account the recent market conditions and trends. All of these are crucially important when you set your list price, so that we can avoid this to begin with getting into the closing process. Being honest and straight with you up front may not always be what you want to hear, but at the end of the day, it's what's going to help you succeed and get on to where you want to go. So the second thing is, how would you contest a possible low appraisal? It is possible to contest a low appraisal by submitting the comparable reports to the appraiser if the appraiser asks. All All too often though, what will happen with an inexperienced agent is they get nervous about the appraisal. They start to second guess their own thought process as far as your list price strategy, and they get nervous. They start biting their nails and trying to figure out what they can do. So when they get the call from the appraiser that set the appointment with you to get the house appraised, they want to immediately try to just toss all the comparables over at the appraiser, not realizing that appraiser is probably sitting back thinking, you know what, that's not cool. I know how to do my job. I'm a certified residential appraiser, and this is what I do. Let me do my job. If I have a question, I'll ask you. Now, one of the things that your listing agent could do for you, and it's a top agent tactic, is to simply ask the appraiser, what information can I provide to you to help you determine an accurate valuation of this property? If the appraiser turns around and requests the comparables that were used, that's one thing. Go ahead and provide them. If the appraiser asks for a list of improvements, which by the way, if you have significant improvements in your home is always best to do, then you provide those as well. What happens if it just still comes in low? Your listing agent could get with the buyer's lender and request a reevaluation of the appraisal. It's ultimately the appraiser's decision if they wish to allow any of the comparables being submitted by the listing agent into their consideration or not. It can be a little bit tricky at contesting an appraisal. It can be done, and it can be done successfully, but it's important to note that like anything else, we got a 50-50 shake here. Best way to alleviate this problem is what? Setting the price realistically to begin with, which not only helps you sell your home in the least amount of time at the best price possible with the best terms most favorable to you, but it will also alleviate any heartache or frustrations with a possible low appraisal moving forward. This is something to take to heart and something to get real about right now. The fourth thing that could go wrong is that the buyer's file is rejected in underwriting. Now this one is awful if it happens. The buyer's file just got rejected, which means that you've already made it through the buyer's due diligence phase. They had the appraisal, we're past that, past the home inspection, we're past the repair request phases of the closing process, and we're coming up on probably about 7 to 10 days away from your close of escrow date, and only to have the underwriter say, nope, not giving this loan to the buyer. They did something silly or something happened here. And when we're talking about something silly happening, we're talking about maybe the buyer went out and applied for new credit. Maybe the buyer went out and got a new home loan, and it threw their debt to income ratios out of whack and disqualified them financially from being able to get the home loan they need to buy your home. Another reason why they sometimes fall out or the underwriter will reject a file is what happens if the family that was buying the house is getting divorced and it was taking both of their income to be able to purchase that home, and now in the middle of this closing process they realize, hey, you know what, we probably shouldn't be married, but I still want the home. The only problem is that buyer one in that two-way conversation can't afford the home on their own. Another thing that could happen is a buyer loses their job. There are so many different variables of why an underwriter might reject a file, and one of the biggest reasons that an underwriter could possibly reject a file is if the buyer's loan officer did not do their appropriate verifications up front of the buyer's income, assets, credit, and employment situation. It's critically important to make sure that whenever you look at an offer, that you talk to your trusted real estate advisor and they're having a conversation with the buyer's lender to ensure that everything was done correctly with the buyer's loan up front. You also want to consider what are the lending institutions writing an offer on your house and ensure that you pick the ones that are the strongest with the offer that's most amenable to you. It becomes tantamount when you're in the closing process to ensure that the loan officer can make good on the buyer's loan pre-approval, and that between the buyer agent and the loan officer, that keeping the buyer on track with the reality of not applying for new credit and not going out and getting a new loan that could possibly derail them in purchasing your new home and also set you back to where you don't want to be, which is square one, selling to a new buyer. It's important to know that this could happen, and having a top trusted real estate advisor working with you will greatly aid in your success. The fifth thing that could happen is maybe the possession dates are a little bit off for the close of escrow. When we're talking about possession dates, we're specifically referring to how soon is the buyer looking to move in. Now, we know that in most cases this would be on the close of escrow date, meaning that you need to be out on the date of the close of escrow so that the buyer can move in. But what happens if a situation arises where you as a seller are buying another property and now you need additional time? Or what happens if a situation arises in the buyer's life, they might need to try to come in sooner? Now, we have two different things going on here. From the selling side, we would call this a seller's leaseback, also known as a rent back. From the buyer's standpoint, we would be calling this early occupancy. Now, you really want to get clear on how this plays out and how this works by having a great conversation with your trusted real estate advisor. Both of them are entirely possible. Both of them come with their own set of pros and cons. It's important to know this up front so that you can help negotiate the best situation that's most amenable to you, whether you'll permit the early occupancy request of the buyer or if the buyer might permit the seller leaseback or rent back arrangement moving forward. It's important to know that everybody has to agree. Sometimes what will happen though is that it will come to a point of impasse where the buyer says, hey, I really got to take possession of this property, or I'm going to have to cancel contract. Or it'll come into a situation where the seller says, hey, unfortunately, I'm really going to need an extra few days here, or I'm going to have to cancel contract. So those are the realities of the situation. The best practice here is to always effectively and openly communicate with the utmost honesty, respect, and keeping everybody on the same page. It goes back to our conversation when we talk about that people do wonderful with great news, they do okay with bad or indifferent news so long as they know, but do pathetically pitiful with no news. Keep that in your mind as you move forward through the closing process, and have an open dialogue with your trusted real estate advisor every step of the way. If you're thinking it, then it's a question that should be asked, and it is just something that should be understood moving forward. So now let's talk about, can a seller back out after accepting an offer, and what exactly is a seller leaseback, also known as a rent back. Looking forward to our next conversation. We'll see you in a few.